I started time-lapse because I spotted some unbelievable clips online, and one of those clips that go viral, and I just basically said, I really want to try that out. At the time I was a commercial photographer, so pushing myself in the studio, jewelry and shoes and people and other products, I was feeling pretty good about that, but I'm the sort of person who just likes to try new things, the harder the better. And I saw those time-lapse clips and I said, wow, I really want to do that. Just another way of seeing the world. You know, in this case with time lapses, you're speeding time up, and it let you see the beauty of the ultra slow sped up. Clouds come to mind. Watching those clouds, if you glance up just a normal time, walking through the day, they're just there, and they might look really nice, and a landscape photographer might frame them beautifully through some trees or with a rock or a mountain. And I wanted to see what they looked like sped up. I wanted to see if I could speed them up and watch that motion just flow faster, and seeing the organic curls and disappearing clouds and approaching clouds. And then the next time I had a chance to really make myself go, wow, I did this exact same thing with the Milky Way, which moves in unbelievably slowly. But overnight Milky Way shots, especially going from day to Milky Way to dawn, that sort of thing is truly beautiful. And you can't even tell it's happening when you're sitting there with the camera, even though you might be falling asleep overnight, but you glance up and there's the Milky Way. You glance up and there's the Milky Way. But once you finish all the edits, and in 30 seconds you watch the Milky Way crest the horizon and arc right over, and then the purple of dawn shows up. It's truly beautiful, and it's just a way that we can't see the world unless we see it through the medium of time-lapse. I'm Charles Gervais. I'm a commercial time-lapse photographer based in London. One of the questions I am always getting is, what do you specialize in? Well, besides commercial still photography and time-lapse, I specialize in anything that is challenging and difficult. The harder it is, the more I want to do it. And if I do it well, the clips are beautiful and the clips are saleable. This includes things like the Milky Way, but I wouldn't just shoot the Milky Way. I might set up a 2-meter slider so that the camera is moving past some beautifully shaped rocks, and as it comes out of the rocks, suddenly the Milky Way is framed really nicely in a crack or in a rock arch or behind some trees. Urban-wise, my favorite sort of time-lapses are dawns and dusk. In the time-lapse world, we call those holy grails because they really are quite difficult to shoot and edit, though the equipment is getting better and better all the time. It takes a lot of skill, in my humble opinion. But the more beautiful and the more unusual it is, the better. So back when I first started time-lapse in 2013 or 2014, I really had no idea how to do it. All I knew is that you had to take a picture every once in a while and you string those together and it creates a movie. So I first started doing time lapses as a stills photographer, thinking like a stills photographer, and my shutter speeds were too fast, everything was too choppy, editing was really difficult, smoothing things out was a huge challenge. There weren't very many places for me to ask questions, so I had to solve most of the problems myself. I didn't know how to make the camera pan. I thought that was something that would be easy to do, and it was very difficult. Had to buy specialty equipment. Sliding the camera, moving the camera along, that was a huge challenge. Again, it involved the purchase of equipment, but then all the learning that involved, figuring out to think like a video person versus a stills photographer, thinking about moving through time, physically starting in one place and the other. That was a huge challenge. Then things like camera bodies, how to output video, what formats to create. Do you create HD, 4K, 6K, 8K? These are all things that I had no experience with. Lots of questions online, lots of questions to new friends. Lenses, what lens do you use? Depth of field, are you messing with that? Shutter speeds, well, I learned very quickly you want to slow those down quite a bit, mainly to blur out birds, but it also looks more cinematic. And shooting with more than one camera at the same time, because I want to make sure that if there's an amazing moment, great sunset, Milky Way or something, I want to capture it in the best way that I can. And I've been known to shoot with up to 5 cameras at the same time, but it is hugely challenging because you're adjusting settings on all those cameras on the go, and if you miss one, things can become too dark or too light. But that means you've got a great little movie at the end. You can put all those clips together. And then, of course, I had to learn how to use things that let me put all those clips together. So huge learning curves, but it's all coming out pretty nicely. There were a lot of problems and a lot of challenges, but I'm the sort of person who likes to really dig in and figure out how to solve those problems. My move into time-lapse has been rapid, but a smooth one. I made sure that I learned how to make things look more cinematic. I did a lot of research on motion, because that's one way of separating the more experienced people from the people who just drop their phone on a tripod, which can still do a great job. So I moved into motion, and then I moved heavily into motion and made a huge investment, in my opinion, in a full carbon slider pan tilt head setup. And with that, I can produce quite cinematic work that you can't just rock up with your extremely capable kit and just do on a tripod. You really need to know your stuff. A lot of my time is spent on Instagram. It's one of my marketing tools, and my Instagram account, the main one, is only time-lapse. So I don't put any of my commercial photography, my stills up there. It's only time-lapse. I get a lot of likes, which is really great, a lot of comments, and a lot of questions. Now, time-lapse is really quite challenging. It's way too challenging to explain over a direct message. So I might answer a couple of questions in the comments below a time-lapse. I might get a little bit more detail in a DM, but really I find that workshops are the very best way to bring across this very complex subject. That way I can work with people, we can spend the day, or we can go from day to night, and they can actually get shots and create their own, and then I can show them post-processing. Impossible to produce answers like that in a DM. The time-lapse I'm shooting today is one that I've done before, but I want to try a different feel to it. It's going to be from daytime into full night, so probably about 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. And the camera is going to be on my Dynamic Perception Stage 1 slider. I've got 2 meters of carbon fiber rail, and the camera will start out on the pan tilt head, and it will be pointing through some gated bars that lead down to the Thames, and I'm gonna line the bars up with the London Eye. So the camera will shoot past Westminster Bridge towards the London Eye, and the slider will be set up such that it's on a bit of an angle. So as the camera rises, it will pull away from the bars. And as it's pulling away from the bars, it's going to pan left and tilt up just a tiny bit, so that by the time it's at the very top of the slider, it'll have cleared all the stonework and it'll be pointing at Westminster and Big Ben, just as the light is falling enough that the bright lights on the scaffolding surrounding Big Ben or Elizabeth Tower are starting to dominate the shot. And they'll all look great reflected in the water. The lights of Westminster, which will be orange, will be reflected in the water. And I'll frame it so that I can still see traffic on Westminster Bridge passing by. And that'll be anywhere between 3 and 5 hours to go from full day to full night. I love all this stuff. It is absolutely fantastic, and every once in a while I find myself just sitting there gazing at whatever I'm photographing and just pinching myself, because this is what I do. This is how I make my living. It is truly wonderful.